count. Thank you for clarifying, Jenna.
And excuse me, Mary and Jenna, I have started recording.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so we'll call the meeting to order. It was 9:01 when we started, technically, before I asked the question. So welcome, everyone. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. I know it's a really busy, always busy, but really busy time of year for most of us. So thank you for being here. And I think, great, everyone's continuing to put their name and affiliation in the chat. So I really appreciate that for the minutes. So this is our interim meeting for our Nevada Early Intervention ICC. And you can see the agenda here. And it was, yep, there it is, it's posted. Scrolling, thank you. We are going to take, I will say that we are going to start with public comment, and then we will take things a little bit out of order. So we'll do that. We're going to flip my Roman numerals today, 4 and 3 today to do that. But we're going to start with public comment. Is there any public comment from anyone?
This is Mary Garrison for the record. I would like to share an update with the council regarding membership. As I have shared in the past, I continue to check with the governor's board committee to ensure that they have the members who are wanting to join and to see if they've approved any of those. Each time I check, it seems like that's getting pushed out an additional month. As of today, I was advised that the governor will be reviewing memberships on December 8th, 2023, so in 2 days. I am not holding my breath because this continues to be the pattern. I spoke with Dr. Jenna Wigler's ward about this and let her know that I would suggest if in January we still do not have those appointments, I believe that the council should consider writing a letter requesting assistance from the governor and ensuring that we have a full council to assist our early intervention system. And that is the update I have. Oh, I'm also going to be adjusting the membership list. If anybody has missed consistent meetings, I am removing them if I'm unable to get in contact with them, because there are some individuals who I have tried to reach out to by phone, email, and I am unable to reach. And so I will remove those individuals, send an updated list to the council of members that are active with their membership date. And we do ask that if you are due to renew your membership in July of 2024, you may want to start that process of renewing that now to ensure that we have approval in time. Are there any questions for me? I know this is a public comment, but I'd be happy to answer any questions. I see 2 hands, but I'm assuming those aren't questions for me. So I'm going to hand it over to, I'll hand it over to Dr. Jenna Wigler's ward.
Okay. First of all, I don't know if other people have seen this, but I feel like, Mary, are you sharing your screen?
I am, and I had mine up
so.
because when I put my camera's on, I try to keep it up so I can see everybody's faces. And
it's fine. I had just like a double thing going on my own. So are there any, this is public comment, so we're not talking too much, but was there anything related to Mary's comment from, and I'm going to address some of those things when we talk about bylaws and strategic planning as well. Anyone?
This is Robin. I just had a quick comment on that. So,
go ahead, Robin.
The ECAC is also experiencing the same problem. I don't know if there's a way that we would want to collaborate and write a very similar letter, maybe using some similar language, or if the governor's office receives 2 letters that are identifying the same kind of challenge. So I just wanted to mention that that is definitely something that they're running into as well. So there were just a lot of common concerns.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Robin. I know that that's happening I personally am having an issue with that on the ECAC. I'll reach out to Tiffany and see who's the Tiffany Alston. I'm making this up about that to see what they're doing. Sure.
And this is Mary Garrison for the record. I will say that if I don't have responses or new assignments for the individuals that are waiting by the end of this month, this will be a topic that we'll discuss in January to see how we want to proceed. So we can consider that at that time as well about collaborating with ECAC. Thank you.
And again, we'll talk about it a little bit later on in the meeting too, about some strategies to fill our vacancies. Lorianne?
I'd like to enter a public comment, please.
Go ahead.
This is Dr. Lorianne Molina Lovell for the record. I have the privilege of being the Clinical Program Planner 1 manager over the IDEA Part C office. I have been serving as the Part C coordinator for 5 years, and I wanted to share with the council that our Part C office concluded our differentiated monitoring supports and services with the Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs, OSIP. This occurred over 2 weeks during November, and our office wanted to thank everyone who participated in that federal monitoring. It was quite rigorous, and we appreciated all of the voices that came to the table. Some of the takeaways from that monitoring included areas of strength that we are in areas that we are doing well and would like to continue performing well in, such as the monitoring processes that that we have adopted since the previous federal monitoring 6 years ago, and areas of improvement that we will look to continue honing on some of our procedures. We were encouraged by OSIP to continue mirroring our program after the Part B 619 program. As you may know, the Part B 619 program is for children ages 3 to 5, and the Part B office is to provide services for children ages 3 to 21 in the school district. And so I wanted to share with everyone and also offer our gratitude to the Part B office in the Office of Inclusion with the Department of Education. They have been a huge support for our team in helping us with our MOUs and our transition practices, as well as our dispute resolution. And we look forward to continued work with them to evolve in those areas. And we also appreciate that the model that we have for our Part C office is reflecting a mirrored model with the Part B office. So the Part B 619 program is within the Office of Inclusion in the Department of Ed, and they monitor and provide general supervision to school districts and schools within those school districts. Very similar to how our lead agency, the IDEA Part C office, is housed within the director's office appropriately and monitoring and providing general supervision for the early intervention system of 11 early intervention state and community partner programs. And so we wanted to emphasize how we feel that we are fulfilling that vision that OSIP has for our Part C office in the model that our state is having this regulatory framework from our office. So thank you for letting me share out about our DMS process. We also wanted to thank Robin Kincaid and the Nevada PEP parent group for their participation, because it's our understanding that you all performed parent panels to gather family feedback and perspectives on the system, as well as many thanks to our director's office, fiscal team, and the Aging and Disability Services Division leadership that were also a part of the DMS process. If anyone has any questions about the DMS process, please let us know. We look forward to sharing out the final report from OSIP, which is expected at the end of March or early April 2024. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Lorianne. Crystal, I see your question, and I think I can address it now, but so Crystal's asking if her membership expires, does it roll over until reappointment occurs? So it's a question, I guess, in public comment. Mary, can you find out? It is my understanding that it does not roll over, that you actually need to be reappointment, but that may just be the practice that other councils use. I know on the ECAC, for example, which is the Early Child Advisory Council, if you are not appointed, then you're not technically a member and not counted towards quorum. You can come to meetings as a member of the public until your reappointment goes through. But Mary, can we verify that information?
Yes. So, and I'm looking at my membership list here. Again, this needs to be cleaned up so I could send it out to y'all. But it looks like, Crystal, your appointment expires at the end of February, on February 29th, 2024. So that I would suggest, if you are going to renew, submit your request now, if you can. And again, I'll be continuing to follow up. I agree with Dr. Jenna Wagler's board. My understanding is that that does not roll over. We are required to resubmit our request for appointment.
And that makes sense. I'm just concerned, again, because of our dwindling size of our committee and getting meeting quorum and being able to get membership participation. Because of the delays with the governor's office and doing all of that, it's just going to continue to put us in a worse situation, because I have been able to come and participate in all of that, and I know that we're making progress, and I just would hate to see that negatively affect us even more so.
I agree, Crystal, and I think we're seeing that on other councils and boards across the state as well, which is why I think if nothing happens in the December round of appointments, that we will need to make a very strong case as to why this needs to happen and the consequences if we don't have full councils. So okay. I will ask, and Mary said it too, anyone who really is up for reappointment, in the first 6 months of 2024, I would encourage you to put your reappointment applications in now.
And Jenna, I am going to talk in, I had mentioned this, I think, a little bit in our last, we've had a lot of growth in the Child Care and Development Program. And so we have a lot of new staff. And so I actually want to internally talk to leadership, because there might be somebody that is better served on this council based on what their position is doing versus what I'm doing. So I want to make sure that whoever we get to submit is going to be the best person to contribute. So I'll work on that on my end simultaneously. So
thank you.
Yep.
So this is Jenna again for the record, and whether for the record again, I have one public comment to make too, and I'll share this with you all in case you did not notice, but the federal agencies across Department of Education and Health and Human Services issued an updated inclusion policy statement last week that was released on Tuesday. So I'll share it in the chat so it can be captured in our minutes, but it is there, and I encourage you all to read it, and we can, if we want to discuss it at future agendas, we can do that. Any other public comment? Okay, thank you. We do have public comment at the end as well, so we'll open that up. So now I'm going to turn it over to Lorianne again For on your agenda, it's item number 4 to discuss the concerns suggesting the SOGI data. So I will turn it over to you, Lorianne.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. Hello again, this is Marianne Molina Lovell for the record. At this point, we were discussing SOGI, which is the acronym for Sexual Orientation, Gender Identity, which has been put into law for the Department of Health and Human Services for Nevada to requiring all programs providing services to the public to obtain information from families. The information is of a sensitive nature, and we have received complaints and through email and phone calls from families who are expressing they're very disturbed at the line of questioning. And so I believe everyone here is aware of this. We had discussed this at a previous meeting or two. You can see there before you on the screen the actual memo. And this is the line of communication that must be prepared and provided to families. The Aging, Disability, and Services Division is following the guidance by the department, and there is on the next page the actual line of questions. And it is that line of questioning that is so concerning to families who are calling in to get help for their baby or for their little one, and then being asked these questions. The questions include to please identify your child's sexual orientation, and then the options are provided, such as gay, lesbian, bisexual, and so on. But there is an option to decline to answer or prefer not to answer. And so that is provided, but the way it is presented initially to families is coming across as abrupt. And so it is my understanding that the IACC wanted to develop some sort of communication expressing this concern and asking the powers that be if that line of questioning could be revisited. Now, we know that because it is law in Nevada, it is in Nevada revised statute, that we cannot change the law, and that there are many steps to get to that point before the legislature. However, it's my understanding that the ICC just wanted to express concerns about this and to prepare a letter and then send it to the governor, to Governor Lombardo. And so in discussing the ICC's thoughts about preparing this letter and discussing this with our program oversight, who is our director's office, Deputy Director Shannon Litz, we were brainstorming and thinking about ways we could be the most effective as a group. And so our Part C office would like to advise the ICC to consider your audience as you continue to consider drafting some sort of communication. It may be a better way to communicate, to craft a letter and then to provide that to the Department of Health and Human Services and to ADSD. Again, the communication that you may choose to do as a council would likely include some language that provides an introductory paragraph that could be shared before the sensitive questions are asked, to give families a heads up that we are about to have some sensitive questions. I must, and the intake specialist could say something along the lines of, I must ask these as this is a requirement for all programs in our department, and please know that you can decline to answer. And so those kinds of things could be shared in your letter if that is something that you felt was appropriate to suggest to the department or to the ADSD. And so in discussing this with our Deputy Director, Shannon Litz, we wanted to let you know that this is our advising, and also let you know that on our end, we are also coming together and seeing what we can do so that there is another effort in our system also working on this. So we are at this time drafting together some suggestions to ask the department to, or the ADSD to revisit um, that introductory language. Again, not trying to change the requirements. We understand well that that requirement is in place to support vulnerable populations who historically are experiencing bullying, discrimination, violence. And so we want to make sure that we are also in support of the regulation to support those populations. But we would like to see if the department would revisit at least the introductory wording for our population to make an exception for that wording for the EI system. And so I'm happy to take any questions when our office completes our draft and is ready to send that off or sends that off to the department. We'll be happy to share an update with you. But I'm happy to take your questions. And again, would just like to advise the council to really think about who your audience is. And instead of sending any correspondence for this issue to the governor, who wouldn't be able to impact that policy change, to consider sending your communication, if you prepare one, to the department and the ADSD. Thank you for your time and allowing me to share out.
Yeah. Thank you, Lorianne. And I'll open up for discussion, but I also just want to remind people, we discussed this in May 2023. So it's in the minutes from that meeting. So I was looking over what we said. During that meeting, we had like just discussed these concerns, and there was a discussion about like developing a script or how it's presented to families. Can you, Lorianne, could you share how this information, a collection of this information is currently being collected from families? How is it introduced? Is there a standard script or presentation that's already being used?
Thank you, Jenna. This is Lorianne Molina Lovell again for the record. I'm going to ask Mary if you wouldn't mind scrolling to the second page so that everyone could see the script. So here before you is the actual script, which is being followed by our state programs that that they are required to follow this script. And so what the ICC could consider providing is a communication with maybe a suggested line or a couple sentences that could go before this to help prepare families for what is coming across as a very abrupt, sensitive discussion. Another part that I wanted to add is an answer to your question, Jenna. How is this data being used? That is not so clear to me and to others I have spoken with. We'd like to think that that the Office of Analytics would be using this data to better serve Nevadans, to identify trends and patterns that could help these vulnerable groups to access resources, to promote quality of life and safety for these Nevadans. But I cannot speak definitively for how the data is being used. But it is my understanding that more information will be forthcoming about how the data will be used. And it is also my understanding that the information is kept confidential. So when the programs are gathering the information and then eventually reporting to the state the numbers with the responses, that they're not including any confidential information. So everything is de-identified. That is my understanding. And I'm happy to give the floor over to anyone else who would like to share about this or add insight. I do see Sarah Horseman Ploger's hand raised. So would like to see if Sarah would like to add any additional information.
Thank you, Lorianne. This is Sarah Horseman for the record. As of right now, the legislature has not, or the department has not provided us a mechanism in which to collect the data. We've only been given instruction that we do have to incorporate it in our intake process.
Other questions? Brittany?
Brittany Toth, parent member, just for the record. I know I wasn't here in May for the original discussion. I was just wondering exactly what is the action item for possible action? Like what is on the table right now? Are we writing a letter collectively as a group that we could all sign on to? And then if so, I understand what Lorianne was describing as just trying to target our best audience and ensuring that I do agree with the general concern and the overall idea that it's not really applicable for a very young audience. I can see why the parents are a little disarmed or not quite ready for that line of questioning. But who could make that change? You know, if we didn't write, if a item on the actual floor for possible action is to write a letter to the governor because we're attempting to, are we asking for a change to NRS? Because that would have to go to them, or is a letter to ADSD, are they even legally allowed to make any kind of change? I guess I'm just asking whoever the staff person is, or whoever might be the appropriate person to let us know from government affairs or something, like what's the best place for us to direct this depending on what we're actually asking for.
Great. Thank you. So I'll address part of that, and then I don't know, Lorianne, if you want to comment as well too. So on our agenda, we have it for possible action, so that if we did decide on something and want to vote on something, we would be able to do that through open meeting law. So that's why it's there. However, the point of this was really to discuss any concerns and potential suggestions, and if we come up with something that we do want to agree on and vote upon, we can, or we can just discuss things and push things to things that we want to discuss at our January meeting or following meetings. So that I think, Lorianne, do you have other comments on that before I get to other people with discussion?
Hey, Jenna, this is Lorianne Molina Lovell for the record, and thank you very much for that question. Again, the IDA Part C office would advise the ICC to consider, if you are planning to draft a correspondence, to consider providing that first to the Department of Health and Human Services and to the ADSD. The contact for our system within the Department of Health and Human Services is Deputy Director Shannon Litz. The request would probably be along the lines of asking the department to revisit the introductory wording and to consider an exception to provide exceptional wording for this population of children birth to 3 years and their family with disabilities and their families. In answer to your question regarding how does law get changed, it's my understanding that we would have to wait closer to the next biennium, and there would be legislation steps that would need to occur. We do have Assemblywoman Tracy Brown May, thankfully here, that could shed more light on that process. And so at this time, I'm not sure, Jenna, if you would like to have the floor go to Assemblywoman Tracy Brown May, but I do see we have other hands up as well. Thank you.
So thank you, Lorianne. Yeah, we do have some other hands up, including Tracy, but I'm going to do them in order that I got them. So Robin Kincaid, your comment or question?
This is Robin Kincaid from Nevada PEP. So I understand that the spirit of the law is to ask the questions. What I did not necessarily see is any kind of introductory process. I mean, the questions are the questions. with the multiple choice responses. So I guess I'm confused why we could not ask those questions with a very well worded introductory reminding the families that we do understand that these children are under the age of 3. And so, and that there are, one of the options in the choice of answers is to decline the answer or, in other words, not provide the information. So I guess I'm a little confused. What are we asking for? And perhaps I just didn't see the introductory. And is the introductory part of the actual legislation? If it's not, then it seems like that there should be a level of flexibility, and that the important piece or the goal would be to try to get the data. And again, if I've misunderstood, please feel free to correct me. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. I just think to clarify your question, and after Sarah, maybe Tracy can help to clarify, because the question I think too is what procedurally is required by the law, what can we add on to, and if we do add on to like an introduction or script for our providers, does that have to be approved and by whom, I think. Yeah. Thank you, Robin. Sarah?
There are a few of us on the council who are ADSD employees, so we probably should recuse ourselves from participation in the vote and letter or any action going forward. This is Sarah Horseman for the record.
Thanks, Sarah, for that thought. Okay, Tracy.
Hi, thanks. Tracy Brown, for the record, Nevada Assembly District 42. So as I look at the NRS, it looks like it was run by Senator Spearman back in 2021. So relatively new, and it really is asking for gender identity information when we're also asking for other types of identifying information. So from a legislative perspective, if we want to make a change, then we would need to craft a possible solution. And then I'm happy to carry a bill draft request relative to switching this up. I don't necessarily know that a bill is going to get you what you need to do. And that perhaps this requires additional vetting, but that when the NRS states that we have to ask for identifying information, but there's no additional disclaimer, it will take a little bit more research. Like I'd like to get into the actual paragraphs and find out what the specifics are, and then work with the Legislative Counsel Bureau. Many times we pass a piece of legislation that just puts a basic expectation into the NRS that then gets rolled out through Nevada Administrative Code, which then is handled within the divisions, right? And so there just might be a way for us to fix this in the NAC that will not require an NRS change. And I think maybe training with regard to the employees that are utilizing this language throughout the divisions could probably be very helpful. As the doctor stated earlier, I think it could be really just a great way to go about it with regard to a letter to the state divisions asking for some wiggle room in asking the disclaimer questions prior to moving into having a conversation with someone who has a baby. You know, obviously the sexual identifying information is probably not going to be relevant at that point. In order to comply with the NRS, though, it could be part of the overarching questionnaire. I think training is probably our best bet. Again, I'm happy to work through the NRS specifics, and I think maybe we can address it at a later meeting, but I'll get on with Legislative Counsel Bureau and find out what background information they have relative to why did we pass this bill the way that it was written. They might have more information.
Great, thank you for that. I really appreciate especially your willingness to maybe look through it more closely for us. I'm also, another question I have about it is just from a data perspective. Of course, people can say do not prefer, and do not prefer is different than maybe not relevant, you know, for, you know, a child under 3. So gender on birth certificate would be relevant, but like sexual orientation, for example, wouldn't necessarily be relevant for a 3-year-old. That time, that's different. That's a different type of data point than prefer not to answer. So I don't know if that's a big deal, but again, it's the intention of some of the law, which this is coming up in lots of spaces. So I'm starting to look into it as well. I would probably recommend at this point that we look into this a little bit more as to really look into the NRS and the some of the administrative code if it's available, and discuss it at our next meeting, or perhaps an interim meeting, depending on, I know our January agenda is pretty full, and to work about some possible solutions. It sounds like looking for solutions, part of that may be, as Tracy said, training for professionals who are implementing this questionnaire and providing kind of a developmentally appropriate script or introduction to it for families. Any other, yeah, Lorianne.
Thanks, Jenna. This is Lorianne Molina Lovell again for the record. I just wanted to add that when we were made aware that our system would have to use to fulfill these requirements, we did request whether we would be considered for an exemption, as we had seen some programs within the Department of Education were able to have exemptions. But when we consulted with our Deputy Attorney General office, they stated that it didn't appear that we could be exempted. Also, I wanted to just share a little bit about Assemblywoman Brown May's question about why would the LCB have developed such a regulation. In rare cases, there are children who are born with both sets of reproductive organs, and that can be a very challenging period of time in those early years as families must decide regarding many things, such as surgeries and treatments, and many types of medical visits for their children. And again, this is very rare, but it can occur. And for those families, such a regulation could be very beneficial, ensuring that these families have access to resources that can support them and promote their quality of life, especially, again, as research shows that the LGBTQ population does experience more risk for discrimination and violence. But nonetheless, the majority of families going through the early intervention system would find this as very sensitive and and as has been reported to us, very disturbing. And so I'm hoping that as communications are brainstormed among the council and our office, that we will find a way to find the most fitting and most impeccable wording that can address all of the subsets of the vulnerable population in early intervention, and provide a way to support staff as well. So I do support that idea of Assemblywoman Brown May's suggestion for training. So anyway, thank you very much for allowing me to share just those last couple of points.
Great. Thank you. Also, Lorianne, I have a question for you. Is how of an urgent issue is this? Would you like us to address this in the January meeting, or would you like us to wait till an interim meeting or our next quarterly meeting, which would be in what, April?
Thank you, Jenna. This is Lorianne Molina Lovell. For the record, the Part C office would request some work to be done sooner than later, especially since the discussion was brought up this past spring. And if we are just in discussion in January and then waiting for April to finalize something, that will be an entire year since the concerns came to us. I realize that there are many priorities for our system and for our council, but I think it's always important to remember when families share their voice that we really take that into consideration and prioritize family voices, remembering why we are here. and perhaps we can find some other ways to have some time savings in the next meeting with preparing documents ahead of time and sending them out ahead of time, as is appropriate to open meeting law. So we do respectfully request that the ICC consider perhaps developing some deadlines internally for yourselves to help with guiding that, so as not to further put off what would be a very beneficial effort for families. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Lorianne. Brittany?
Sure. Brittany Toff, for the record. I was just wondering if it would be appropriate in my work, in my regular work for the city of Henderson. I've staffed some of our boards and commissions on the other side of the table, and oftentimes we draft documents for member consideration, edits, revision. Would it be possible or appropriate, and if time doesn't allow that, I completely understand, just trying to think of things that will help us move the ball forward to, like she said, not you know, take as up to a year. Would it be possible to draft or to have staff draft a letter to be part of the backup in the next meeting for board member consideration and review? That way we may have something we can act on in January.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Brittany. That was my next comment, actually. I was going to suggest that for our next meeting, which is only 5-ish weeks away, ask for maybe 2 volunteers. I think at this point, and I'll no pressure, Tracy, but if you wanted to look into a little bit, if you would look into it a little bit more into the law for us a little bit, but I'd like to, if there was 2 volunteers that would be interested in, I think let's focus on an introduction to families first. Like, how can we be presenting this to families for us to work from at our next meeting? Is there someone that would be interested in drafting, a couple sentence written introduction or script for our professionals to be using with families that we can then discuss at the next meeting with everyone? Janice, do you have a comment, or are you volunteering?
This is Janice Lee. I will volunteer to work with somebody to draft an introduction for consideration.
Great, thank you, Janice. Is there someone else that would like to work with Janice?
Oh. Robin put in the chat.
Oh, sorry. I moved my chat. Sorry. Oh, Robin, great. Tracy, you as well? So
I'm not, this is Tracy Brown May for the record. Sorry, I'm not really good at the script writing piece, but I'm happy to get the research done with LCB and to check the NAC to find out what that language is. According to the NRS that I just read, it's not descriptive as to what the script should be. So that's going to come out of NAC if there's anything there. I'll double check with the Legislative Counsel Bureau within the next couple of days and then send that information over if that'll be helpful.
Great, thank you so much. So Robin and Janice have volunteered to draft a script that we can talk about in our January meeting. Our meeting is on, without looking at it, it's on the 18th. Without looking, I think it's around there. If you could, honestly, it'd be great if we had that before the holidays, if that's possible, or definitely by, so we can get meeting materials out. It's on the 18th. Definitely by January 4th, something that we could include. And again, this would be a draft for us to work from and include in our meeting materials for our January meeting. Mary.
Thank you. This is Mary for the record. I just want to say if we can do a vote to draft that letter, that would be wonderful for our minutes. So if you guys would be okay with doing that, please.
Yeah, well, one, I don't think we're talking about writing a letter to anyone at this moment. Unless I'm misunderstanding the council.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. The writing of the script.
Right.
Oh, you need a motion.
Yes.
You need a motion to write a script.
We can. I'll be honest, I don't know that we need to because we don't really have an action that we're not approving anything. We're talking about future action, but I'll entertain a motion for our next meeting to continue this conversation and consider a script that Janice Lee and Robin Kincaid will draft for us.
I'll second it.
I need a motion actually first, but if you want to so move.
Oh, you didn't make it. I'm sorry.
I can't make them. Well, I can, but I prefer the chair not make motions. But if Brittany would like to make a motion, that'd be great. You just say so moved.
So moved. That's sure.
Thank you, Brittany. Is there a second?
This is Robin Kincaid. I'll second it.
Thank you. Robin Kincaid is second. Is there any discussion on the motion on the table? Okay. Anyone opposed to the motion to continue this conversation in January and consider a script draft for providers to use when presenting the SOGI data collection? Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion passes. Mary, let me know if you're good to go.
We are good to proceed. Thank you. I appreciate you all.
Thank you. And Mary and I will make sure that for the January agenda, that is part of it. So, okay, thank you for all that conversation. Go ahead, someone had a comment.
Sorry, this is Sarah for the record. Should we state officially who's abstaining from the vote?
Oh, yes, I didn't see anyone actually abstain. No one raised their hand when I did abstentions.
Myself, this is Sarah Horseman for the record. Myself, Julie Dame, and Sandra LaPombe should abstain from the voting on this action due to being ADSD staff. So
then we actually have to redo the motion and vote.
I'm sorry about that.
That's okay. That's okay. That's a complicated Robert's Rules of Orders now that I have to look up. Anyone know offhand? Can we just do a new additional motion?
I would do an additional motion, and the reason for their abstention will include that in the notes. Yeah.
So I need just a new motion. Same motion. We'll just revote.
Sure, I'll try and let me know how it goes. I'd like to make a motion to draft a script for providers and research our abilities within the NAC and discuss that in our January meeting.
Great. Thank you. Brittany, is there a second?
Robin Kincaid, I'll second the motion.
Thank you. Robin Kincaid is second. Any discussion? Okay. Anyone opposed to this motion? Anyone abstaining from the motion? I see 3 abstentions. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. Mary, do you have that now? Are we good now?
I do. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. So now we're going to go back to item 3, which is the review and revision of the ICC bylaws. Previously we're working from the July 2014 version. Yep, Mary?
I wanted to let everybody know that I included the approved bylaws in your packet. Janice, I know that you were taking notes and I truly appreciate that. I have a copy of the notes that you provided, and I was going to ask if you can continue to take those notes in today's meeting, and then we'll follow up with a copy of that draft in the next meeting.
Yes, Mary, this is Janice Lee. I will do that. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So with that, for just a like a reminder of what we were doing, we were going through our bylaws kind of line by line at the retreat in October, and Janice was taking some notes. My notes is that we got to page 5, but Janice, could you maybe confirm is that correct?
Sorry, I'm just.
And this is Mary. This is Mary for the record. I was going to say, Janice, if you want, you can pull up and share your screen with the Word version that you have, if you'd like. And then you could be sharing the edits as they're being made.
That might be great.
So I'll stop sharing right now.
Great, thank you. And this is a section 2. Yeah, well, which is lots of discussion here. So great, thank you, Mary. Like I'd written lots of notes. So Janice, yes. I'll take the lead from you as to kind of where we ended. And then what we'll do, we'll see where we get through today. And then we'll, at our next meeting, and we'll see where we are and what our next steps are if we are ready to present a new draft to look at. So for those of you that were not with us in October, I'll summarize some of the things that were made. Part of it, we were updating some language related to children with disabilities and their families, and also updating any legislation, either state or federal, that's changed since 2014. So those were some changes made. There was also some, we also were changing the formatting just to make it a little bit easier to read and including more headings and numbering. So those were some things, kind of overview, and also updating any language related to inclusive language, including gender and other inclusive and equitable language. Those are kind of the big overview edits that we were making. I don't know, Janice, if you want to, I'll turn over to you just to say if there's any other significant edits that we made in the sections. We were also, and I will tell you too, for those of you, because I know we're talking about strategic planning today and moving forward as well, we know that we need to do more significant strategic planning. So we were working with the vision, the current vision and mission that we have, and more so just updating some language to be more inclusive and equitable. And if we're going to change significant components to our vision and mission and our strategic plan, then we can come back and revisit our bylaws. But we were trying to align our current strategic plan into the bylaws. So, Janice, if you wouldn't mind, just if there's any other significant edits that you want to discuss for people that weren't with us in October.
Yeah, this is Janice Lee. I was thinking we could just slowly scroll through as far as we were able to get back in October, because I know not everybody was there. And what I will say, I've had some correspondence with Mary Garrison. I think what had happened is I'm not sure if I saved the most recent updates that we had to the vision statement changes that are in draft form here. So I recall, I'm going to be honest, But this doesn't seem like where we left off. So anyway, if there are others who were present with us who have some input, for the language that we were working on changing, I would greatly appreciate that. I'm not quite sure what happened, but the best that I can surmise is that I did not save the document, and perhaps I closed it out, or something happened. So I know Robin has her hand raised, so I don't know if it's better to let Robin jump in first or to just scroll a little bit to look at as far as we got. Do you have suggestions?
Well, Robin, what's your comment or
Yeah,
question?
Just real quick, this is Robin Kincaid. I just want to point out that we had not really looked at this since 2014. I guess I just wanted to make sure that people that weren't there wanted to know, well, why did we even go this direction? Well, we just really saw that this language did not reflect the current best practices or language that we were seeing on a national level as well. So this was our opportunity. We just we need to kind of clean this up. So I just want to point that out as some foundation for why we're where we are. So please go ahead.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Robin.
Um,
This is
I
Janice
think while
again.
you're scrolling, Tracy has a question as well, or a comment.
Thanks, Tracy Brownman for the record. I do. So 1.2 says 3 and under, right? And I'm just curious to know why we would add age of 3. And the reason behind that, while I understand that early intervention services is usually 0 to 3, is there any opportunity to move it to 5, right? Like, and so do we limit ourselves when I'm just going to throw it out there and ask the question, right? Like, we continue to try to move funding to 5, and so that's my question.
Yeah, thank you. We did discuss this at quite a length when we discussed this first, and we decided to use age of 3 because Part C services and the ICC specifically addresses children under the age of 3. Yeah. And so if something happens in our state and that changes, we can come back to the bylaws and change that. But the purview of the ICC is really to be focused on children under the age of 3. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So this is Janice Lee. Just what's on the screen is maybe we could just go section by section. 1.3 around the mission statement. So you'll see that there are a few edits that we made regarding language at this point. So I'll try to watch our participants here if there's any questions as we're moving forward. For section 1.4 on guiding values, I don't have any notes in here, but I don't believe we made or had any fundamental changes or discussion related to this section.
Yeah, sorry, Janice. I know we had talked about that section a little bit and just to align any of the language with other changes. So, like, for example, we discussed removing special needs from throughout the document. So I see it's still there, but that was something I know we were going to do. Like, we were going to change special needs throughout the document. We're also going to, for example, change pronouns to more inclusive pronouns throughout. So those are just a couple things that we knew we weren't going to do in the moment. We're just going to change it throughout the document.
Yeah, thank you for the clarification. I figured it probably is helpful to put specific notes in here so for everybody's information and knowledge.
The other thing I noted too was in guiding values is that we had discussed, but hadn't decided what we were going to say, but to have either another point under guiding values or another section with a commitment to equity, inclusion, and diversity. And that's that, but we didn't say what that was going to say yet, but just a clear commitment to that and what that meant.
Your notes are better than mine. Okay. Um, and it was already mentioned too earlier, sorry, this is Janice Lee, around the overall organization of the document itself. And so again, as we're going through, I didn't necessarily put it in every section, but it was just noted at the beginning for some generalized organization as well. Some of the notes and edits in here, as you can see, are noted from others like Mary Garrison. And then I think it's the other individual is from the Attorney General's office, is what I understand. So for those who were not present with us in October, just for some reference here, this section is on membership. And from my recollection, there was some, again, the discussion came up about the organization of the bylaws themselves. So we did want to revisit that. But at least from what I understand, and I think from our discussion, we don't really have any control or say about the actual membership. Is that correct? So I don't think we were really actually able to make any changes here. Are there other things to say about this section?
Yeah, that's correct. We cannot make changes in the bylaws. If we want to make any changes to these, that's part of believe statute, the state Nevada statute. So if we wanted to make changes to membership, we've got to go through legislation first, and then that would reflect in our bylaws, update to our bylaws.
Okay, and this is still the section on membership. So again, there was some discussion around organization to put some additional sections here. So you'll see that under appointment and then orientation. So we did have some discussion about an orientation process for ICC members. That is not something I don't, or it was embedded in the bylaws, but again, organization wise, did not have its own section. So I believe that's the changes that are here, and what's in green, in the green text and underlined is are the suggested edits that we were working on in the October meeting. So again, we did not finish these sections either. You'll see that there's questions here, right, to put a time limit for an orientation process and who's going to do that. So I think we still need some discussion in this area. But these are our notes here. As we move down these sections as well, around membership and participation, so included some conversation around attendance. And you know, and Mary Mary Garrison mentioned that earlier when we were looking at our membership list and talking about quorum. Let's see what else. I think some other language in general to Jenna's point around using potentially the word contributors versus stakeholders. So that's why you see that strike through language there. And then also, sorry, to move back up to item number 5 in this section, to strike out task forces and or. So just to use just committee language. And then we're moving on to page 4, and this is the end of page 4 is as far as we got. So section 2, you see this question here about, is this section even necessary? So I think those are questions for others to consider, but we did also talk about the addition here around strategic planning every 5 years and to review those annually. It's not noted in here, but I believe we did have some discussion about, you know, do we have potential funding to support strategic planning? Would that be done internally? But again, I did not put any additional notes here because I don't think we came up with not necessarily a decision, but a recommendation for that. I think there was some additional things to look into in that respect. And then again, another section here about this portion highlighted in green, if this is necessary, and is this redundant because of open meeting law? So I think our discussion was around just getting some guidance in that area, again, around if this is needed in the bylaws. And I think for our time in October, I believe that's as far as we got in our discussion. I don't know if you have anything else in your notes, Jenna, or if you want me to continue moving through.
Yeah, I think the next section had a lot of notes from our legal counsel when they reviewed it. But we did not discuss them point by point. So maybe that's a good place to start, would be maybe section 4, just so that we do review it all. So what we did in our October meeting, I'll continue to also watch time here too. It's just to start, and we kind of would read the section and see if anyone had any suggestions or changes, and we'll note those changes, and then we'll see how far we get today, and we'll review the whole document when we've got through that first round. So let's start, and thank you, Janice, to continue to take notes if you don't mind. So I'll start with section 4 here. These are also, and Mary said, in your packet that you received as well. But I will say this section, we can't really undo these. Well, they're part of open meeting law and part of our things we do, but I'll read them anyways. So section 4:1, we have a quorum shall be required for transaction of all business. The only thing I would think to add is what quorum is, but that's, we could add that if people want. Any thoughts or comments on point A, that we will have a quorum for business?
Is quorum 2/3? Is that what you mean?
So quorum, it's 50% plus 1. And that is Nevada. That's, yeah, and that is a Nevada statute. Robin says, is transaction the correct term?
Instead of business?
It's very businessy. Yeah, I don't know.
I have a question. So on the quorum piece of it, is it based on the current appointed members, or are they taking into the vacancies into account? No. Okay.
It's only appointed members.
Okay.
So two things on this point is, one, the language we want to use required for transaction of all business. Do we want to change that term to something else? And if so, what would you like to change it to? Anyone have suggestions?
This is Julie Dame for the record. If you read A and B, they're kind of similar in what the quorum is in B. So I think we could maybe combine it and say something like the quorum made up of the members will be required for all ICC transactions, or something to that effect.
So this is Janice. Is it easier or simpler if those are still separate? For me, I see A as, right, that the quorum is required, and then maybe we edit B for the definition of quorum. I don't know if that's necessary, but
And I also think the second sentence of B is a separate thought about voting. This is an organizational piece, right, that I know we're looking at too, because I think voting is discussed in another section as well.
this is Janice. My other thought here is, should we base the definition, maybe the definition of quorum just is listed as Nevada's definition, and I don't know if we would just cite the correct statute or legislation. Maybe that might be better, so that if that changes, then we don't then have to change our bylaws.
Yeah, I tend to agree. And Robin has some potentially better language, just conduct business instead of transaction of all business. To Julie's point, do we want to combine A and B? Or keep them separate, as one is that quorum is required and then B is what the definition of quorum.
In Henderson, we used to be able to continue to have a meeting with non-voting items if we didn't have a quorum, and then the interpretation by our attorney's office changed and we're no longer allowed to hold meetings without quorum. And so to me, I think A is whether or not we can even have a meeting, and B is a vote. That was just my interpretation.
So I think at this point, let's keep them separate. And with Brittany's point, yeah, to align with what maybe other entities are doing. I'm saying I've been spending a lot of time with bylaws in the organizations I'm with. We do tend to have these separate most of the time. And then did you put a note that for B that will refer to, yeah, the whatever the NRS for that is, which I'm sure we can find somewhere easily. Open me. Okay.
Sorry, this is Janice again. To Brittany's point, and just in terms of our organization, what is currently in B, right? Those 3 sentences, I'm wondering if it might be easier, or does it simplify it or make it more complicated if we have the definition of bylaw, or sorry, of quorum as item B, and then maybe the new item C would be about voting? Just as from an organizational or an understanding comprehension standpoint.
I think so. I think voting should be a separate item, if you will, which is common. So I think it's clear, like, what do we have to do to even have a meeting or have business? What defines quorum? What is how are decisions made? It's kind of so they're separate. It could be separate things.
Okay.
D also has some content about voting. There's just one sentence about voting in B. There's also another comment somewhere else on some other page about voting that we'll find.
I know.
We can grab somewhere else. So I will say, I know it's just so you know, and this is the most exciting activity ever. We did decide it does help to kind of just go through it one by one and have the discussion, and then it'll be that it'll be done. It'll be a little laborious until we get there, but then when we get there, it'll be better to do that. Any other immediate comments on this section 4 right now? And obviously we'll come back to it when we find other things that maybe would pair better organizationally when we move forward. Okay, seeing none, let's move on to section 5. Again, this is still our drafting, so. Oh, no, I lost my section here. So this is a section, and I don't know, we need to talk about, we just need more descriptive titles. This is kind of about agendas and meeting materials. So I guess I'll just read through this. The first comment that we used Robert's Rules of Orders, and we used open meeting law. Can we just double check that that's the correct, still the current open reference to open meeting law? Just to put a note that we'll just double check it.
Okay.
Can't imagine it's changed, but let's just double check.
Yeah, this was the update. Sorry, this is Janice. This was the update provided
Oh, this
from
is the updated one. Okay, great. Oh, you're right. That is perfect. Okay. The next list here, 1 through 4, you can read through that. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah.
This is Sarah Horseman for the record. I just have a question in number 3 as to why request in writing needs to go to DPBH staff. Should that be DHHS staff?
That was added. Mary, do you know why that was added?
Let me take a look. It is DHHS. Trying to see who put DPBH. Oh, Piran. The DAG's office put that, and I believe she might have just had that wrong. So it is Department of Health and Human Services, or DHHS. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome. Although we love our DPBH colleagues.
Yeah.
No
Yes, of course. Just, it's not going to make it to us if they send it there.
Right. I would also recommend, well, just doing a check. If we haven't, either write out that whole office unless we have it clearly described somewhere else, just so people don't get confused. I don't necessarily see it, but we can do a check. So this just really talks about, yeah, that there'll be agenda, if you have agenda items to submit them 45 days.
And this is Sarah Horseman for the record. I did see that Mary had asked the question that Part C has taken on the responsibility, but really it looks like here it should be more of the council to develop the agenda.
Mm-hmm. In the past, it was really the co-chair's responsibility to develop the agenda. Since we've had some fluid co-chairing the past couple of years, the Part C office has taken on that responsibility. So
Thank you for scribing, Janice.
Yes, thank you. Any other thoughts on this section? And again, we get to think about this many times. So if you don't know that, let's move on to section 6. So we do have an ICC budget that's prepared by the Part C coordinator. We do review this at the annual meeting. I wonder if we should take out the word face-to-face meeting, just to not require us to be in person anymore, since we made those changes to meetings previously. Brittany?
Oh, sorry, I was trying to do a thumbs up. User error.
Oh, that's okay. And then expenses for, let's make sure I have the, so they have a new chat. Okay. Expenses for lodging, etc., prescribed upon law authorization, the governor stage. Expenses shall include stipends for childcare. Yes. Were there any changes here that, yes. I'm looking at what was already in here. Just to see whether there are changes from the AG's office here. Any changes here? Okay, we'll move on to section 7. This is about conflicts of interest. The addition here was just to include the current statute related to this. We do sign conflict of interest forms when you complete your boarding council appointment, just FYI. And then section 8 is kind of our potential membership or nomination committee. This says we can convene a nomination committee if needed to fill vacancies. So we are allowed to do that without other approvals. Any questions about that section? It was Article 2. Let's move on to Article 3. We did have some conversation about Article 3 a little bit, but didn't note any changes. But I can highlight some of the things we talked about as we go. So section 1, this is about the co-chairs. So the agency co-chair. So this officer of the ICC should be include an agency co-chair elected by the ICC among the members of the ICC. The co-chair may not be a representative of a lead agency. In the event of a permanent, in the event of permanent inability of the agency co-chair to act, they shall elect basically a new co-chair from the membership. And these are the duties. You can read through those. I have 2 things to add in this section as people read. 1, G, act as a mentor to the parent co-chair. I thought maybe we should talk about some clarification with that. What does that mean? And then also we should add the term of the co-chair. It is included in the section 2, but it's not included in section 1. And we discussed that currently, if you'll see in section 2, it says that the co-chair serves a 3-year term. We discussed changing this to a 2-year term since we serve 3-year terms on our appointment to the council, and it would be challenging for you to serve a 3-year term if your term on the council is 3 years, because you would just be getting onto your appointment, be elected, and then you wouldn't be able to serve your full term, a 3-year as the chair, because it would probably your appointment on the council will expire before your term as chair would expire. So we did discuss changing that to 2 years to align better with our 3-year term on the council. Does that make sense? Does that make sense when I say it out loud? And then make the same change for below, but we'll get to that in a minute. Any thoughts on what I discussed, or other thoughts on section 1, the duties of the co-chair? My other question, and we can move to section 2 as well, is just more of a philosophical question as to the differences between the agency co-chair and the parent co-chair, and should they just have very similar responsibilities? I want to make sure there's like equity and equality between the agency and the parent co-chair, and if that's reflected in our bylaws. So Mary says in the chat that maybe the roles should coexist with the same responsibilities. I apologize. My office light turns off like every 20 minutes if I don't move around. So I apologize that I'm getting up. Other thoughts on these sections 1 and 2? I agree, Robin. The term alternating responsibilities, I'm not exactly sure what that means. Mary?
I believe, again, I was not here in 2014 when these were written, but I believe that is speaking more to altering who chairs the meetings. Yeah. So.
That's what I think too. So
maybe
I think if
more
that's what we want, we could say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering if we could combine these sections and say, like, have a section about the ICC chairs or co-chairs. And also, like, for example, like section 2 with the parent co-chair, they discuss term limits, but we don't discuss term limits for the agency co-chair. There's nothing said, so I don't know what it. I'm just open. Mary, I also want to check that we're still at quorum. I know that Brittany has to step off, but are we still good?
So this is Janice. Oh, sorry. Let me not interrupt Mary's quorum question.
Oops.
Are we just confirming that we still have quorum? Sorry, this is Janice.
Yes. I don't know. I did something to my team, so now I can't.
I think Mary put in the chat earlier that she had to step away, that it should still have quorum after I hop off. So I think she said we were good in the chat.
I think we're good. Yeah.
I'm confirming again right now, but I believe we should be good.
Okay. So can I this is Janice Lee. Can I clarify for our notes? Is there, or was your latest suggestion is to perhaps just have co-chair responsibilities laid out, and they could be for the agency co-chair or the parent co-chair? Is that the suggestion to consider?
Yeah, that's my suggestion. I think we need to clarify that there should be a parent co-chair and an other co-chair. I don't know if agency is the right word, but that there should be, definitely a parent co-chair and another co-chair, but then the responsibilities could be similar. So maybe that's something that, Robin says maybe we need to just work on drafting that section together and bringing that back to people. Thank you. Thanks, Robin. Great. So when you're ready, Janice, we'll move on to that next section 3, and we'll just come back to those sections. Like if we can do that in between meetings. Mm-hmm. This section is kind of about the support that the ICC gets from the lead agency. So just says we'll be provided with support. I think we can move on to this, and I think we'll do this for about 9 more minutes, and we'll see where we get. So Article 4, terms and office duties. This is where there's some duplication of that previous section. Just some things in this first paragraph, I guess I can read out loud. Some of this is someone brought up, like holding the office of the pleasure of the governor's office. That's from state language, so we will not be changing that. The one question people did have was the last sentence of this paragraph was that members may be appointed for only 2 consecutive terms unless approved by consensus of the council. I don't know if people have thoughts on that. We have not been practicing that part of our bylaws, to my knowledge. So I don't know if that is and the AG didn't make a note on that, so I wasn't sure if that's something that that we put in our bylaws, or if that's something from Nevada boards and councils. I don't know if anyone had any thoughts or insight on that. I have not seen that being practiced on the other boards and councils that I've sit on. But we also can decide what we want to have in it. If we want to have it, then we can. Yeah, Robin?
Yes, this is Robin Kincaid. I have not seen us practice that process to vote, with an approval to override, a consecutive term. There are, some required members and by agency, and so then the agency may continue to still request that a particular individual. So I don't know. I honestly don't see a value to that, but we certainly can have a discussion about it.
And Mary commented that maybe we've been not following this practice due to membership. I don't know. I mean, I think there's probably benefits of someone not being on, being on council forever, especially if there's other people. But there are some agency requirements, and in our state, there's some limit, not there, limited people available to fill those agency requirements. Other people's thoughts? I think we can double check on if this is, like a Nevada state statute or requirement, or if it's something we put in. That obviously, if it's a Nevada statute, we have to follow it for sure. I don't know rule or statute, Janice.
I know, I don't either.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't taught the law class in a couple years, so the definition there is challenging, but we can find out. And then we can discuss this. I think, and then discuss if we have it in here, then we need to practice it, I will say too. Well, let's think on that for a sec. Great. Next sentence, we talked about changing the terms, for co-chair. The other thing, okay, the next pair, and this is where I feel like some organizational bullets or numbering would be really helpful. Thank you, Brittany. We'll see you next month. Just there's a lot of things in this section. So any council member, this is the next section. So any council member with 3 consecutive unexcused absences a year will be considered to be reviewed. We have not brought this to council membership for a vote for someone to be removed or terminated. We basically have just checked in with them and asked them if they are going to continue or not. And if they don't continue, then we remove them from the council. So again, this is something that we haven't practiced. I don't know if people have thoughts on that. I think it's very important to have something in our bylaws about the expectations and continued absences so that we can do the work of the council. And there obviously is the next A and B are about resignations, however. So there's, I think here too, Janice, for thoughts, I would probably have a section, as I just did someone else's bylaws, about like removal could be one section and resignation is a separate section. Let's see. The other section we may want to have is a potential leave of absence, like for our council, probably not. But for example, if you're on family leave for something and you're definitely not going to be there for a meeting or two, you'd still probably fall in this category. So now I'll open up for any thoughts. Okay. So this base, I mean, and someone can say if I'm reading this correctly. This says if someone's missed 3 consecutive unexcused absences, so I guess we need to define what excused absences are, that they can be removed. And then maybe it sounds like the 2/3 vote could be if we don't want to remove them, correct? Is that how that's reading? Like, if we don't agree with their removal, we can vote to make a recommendation for them not to be removed? Or does this say that if they've missed 3, then we vote to see if they should be removed or not? Do people want to lend their interpretation of that paragraph?
This is Janice. I think I originally read that as we would need to vote to remove someone, but now that I read it again, I'm not certain.
Robin?
Yeah, this is Robin Kincaid. I think I read it like the same way Janice did, but now I'm not so sure myself. It is that I don't recall us ever really going through that process. But I also didn't know that is it a requirement to advise the governor? Is that someone has is no longer part of the council? Is that in here, or is that just a practice that is expected to be done?
Mary, do you know, since you've been involved in this process?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Hi, this is Mary for the record. So yes, and I put in the chat that, and I said this in the public comment, but this is a perfect time to discuss this a little further. So I will be reviewing our membership list again and confirming the term expirations for everybody, contact information, and then I'll also be looking to see who has not been attending. And I will be doing that before our January meeting so I could bring that back to the council for review. Typically, and we do have a member who will be leaving us. And so typically what happens is if somebody is no longer able to be on the council, they will let me know and I reach out to the governor's council board and will let them know with the communication that I receive from the council member. I have not run into a situation though where we have had to remove somebody because they haven't attended. So this would be the first time I'm running into this situation. And so as council members, you have the right to decide how you want to do that. Based on the bylaws, and I know it's a little blurry here on how that works, but I can either go through that, and if the people have not, I said in the chat, there's 2 I know that haven't been here for over a year. I would recommend removing those members because I also can't get a hold of them. But I can wait to discuss with the council if you prefer, or I could go directly to the governor in those circumstances. I don't know that we would enforce it for just the 3 men. I don't, it's up to the council. So I don't know if that gives you any insight, but typically I will contact them when somebody is no longer able to serve on the council, but that's always by member's choice. They're letting me know. This is more specifically for individuals who aren't attending. And I really am running into this now because I know there's some people that have missed a significant amount of meetings. So.
Great, thanks, Mary. I guess another question too is to look at, and maybe that'll be my homework, is to look at like the boards and council rules, because maybe this is a rule from them too. I'm just thinking that 2/3 vote. I know in the past we've had people that have been, they can't come anymore or whatever, and then we do provide a recommendation of appointment replacement. So okay. So let's maybe do a little bit more research on this one and come back to it. I know I said we were going to end, so we should. I will say though, we only have 2 more pages left. And the one page is a lot of things that I don't know that we can change because it's mostly in, I believe it's in statute, but we can do next time. We'll get to that one. So we'll pause here at this. I don't know. That's why we need better numbers. Article
3.
Article 4, Section 2. And then we only have 3 more sections to do. Well, a couple extra little ones. And Mary, remind me, I know we have our January quarterly meeting, but we'll probably need an interim meeting after that, correct, to finish this. But we can meet on that. I can't see what it's on our agenda.
Yes, sorry. I had to get my camera back on. So, and I was actually just typing that in the chat about how I think we should proceed with that and my suggestion. So we had scheduled this interim meeting between now and our January meeting. January's meeting is already scheduled for the 18th. And we will have an opportunity at the end of that meeting to schedule not only the April meeting, but any additional interim meetings that we would like. So at that time during January, because I would not suggest having another interim meeting between now and that January meeting, we'll discuss further and see when everybody is available to continue this work in between quarterly meetings.
Great. Crystal?
I just wanted to bring up there's a potential conflict. There's a placeholder, and because Jenna, I know it's on your calendar too, for the early childhood workforce framework leadership work group meeting that is all day now on Thursday, January 18th. So I have that on my calendar. I don't know if there's any of the other members here that would potentially need to attend that meeting, but that's a big one that it says placeholder, but I don't know if that's confirmed or not, or if someone knows more about that.
I think it's confirmed.
Okay.
I saw that.
It came up and I was like, oh no, I already said that I would be there for quorum. And so I just don't know if we wanted to discuss that.
Yes, Mary, I think it'd be helpful if you sent a doodle poll to check on the 18th. For sure. Thank you. There's also like an ECAC meeting on the 17th. That's a pretty packed week suddenly. But let's just check and see where we are. I am supposed to be at that workforce meeting, but I suppose I will come to the ICC meeting, obviously. Thank you. Okay. But I do think the bylaws will push to an interim meeting more because our January meeting is pretty full and we have to do the APR that day. That is the priority. So I don't want to overschedule whatever we do in January. Thank you. I'm going to move on to our next agenda item with the thought that we've talked about this. I wanted to, get more information about, the needs of, we talked about strategic planning, and we also asked to look and see if there's resources for strategic planning. And then also, what are the immediate needs for these subcommittees that we need to have them work on as we revisit strategic planning? So we kind of discussed that we weren't sure what to do with the subcommittees if we don't have a strategic plan to guide that work. But we also know that we also need to have these, some tasks need to be done. So I don't know if Lorianne or Mary have thoughts on how to move forward with strategic planning at this point, and especially the needs of these subcommittees, the immediate needs of these subcommittees. So I will turn it over.
Thank you, Jenna. This is Mary for the record. I believe, and as you had stated before, you will continue to do the revision of the bylaws through these interim meetings to ensure that that work can get done and that those quarterly meetings are more for items that need to be shared with the council or discussed by the council outside of these things like bylaws and strategic planning. So I would suggest, though, I believe I said this during the retreat, and I don't know if we'd be open to it. We do have the January meeting. We would likely do an interim meeting before April. And I would like to suggest potentially doing an additional April meeting. So maybe the quarterly meeting and some additional time, if possible, or closely after, to work on strategic planning. And I have reached out to a couple of organizations to see about assisting us with this process. I haven't had anybody let me know that they could do that. So I believe Lorianne and I, we can go back to our TA folks through OSEP and some of the other TA organizations across the country and see if they have any availability to assist us with that process. I would say it's probably better to do in person if people have the availability, though, just because there's a lot of collaboration and breakouts when this happens, historically, from what I've seen. So each subcommittee will break out in their own session to discuss what their goals are and then bring it back to the larger council to vote on approval of those. So I would like to consider that, and I think we should talk more about that at the end of January, or when we meet in January. And we can also, in the meantime, I can send out some doodle polls, not just for the January meeting, but for a strategic planning event that we could possibly have in April or around that time.
Great. Yeah, thank you for that, Mary. And I think too, at least my experience with strategic planning is it is a more intensive process that I agree being in person would be great. And also it'll take multiple kind of steps. So and I don't know too, without walking and grabbing something, the ECAC did use a consultant for that process. I don't know, can't remember who they are, but you can find it, and we can reach out to them as well. So I think these subcommittees at least can be on hold until January, and we'll revisit them. And I agree with doing some more strategic planning with some guidance to help us get to those needs. Okay, we only have 5 minutes left. So any public comment to end this meeting today? Okay, hearing none.
This is Mary for the record. I'm so sorry. Is Kelly Hess on the line still? She is. I wanted to share that this will be Kelly's last meeting with the council. She is resigning due to other obligations, as I'm sure we all understand. And so I just wanted to say thank you to Kelly for being here today. Even though you are fully loaded with a busy schedule, you did make it to this meeting to ensure that we had quorum. And I truly appreciate that, as well as all the other efforts that you have made to be a part of this council and provide your feedback.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Kelly. I really appreciate your service and wish you well, and also remind you you're always welcome to come to meetings.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. You guys have all been awesome over the years, and I appreciate you.
Thank you so much. Robin?
This is Robin Kincaid. I just wanted to possibly either, maybe we need to put it on the agenda. I don't know. I know that we're not doing agenda items, but would like to know the date or anticipated date that we might see the report from OSEP, because I believe they are going to prepare a report. And I know that it takes a while. It's something in the area of 90 days perhaps. And I was wondering if you might be able to note that for the minutes, just an approximate date when that report would be available. And then we would look at possibly a meeting to discuss the report findings.
Thank you. I believe Lorianne said it'd be available around March, so we will definitely discuss it in our April quarterly meeting.
That'd be great.
For sure.
Thank you.
My other question, this isn't public comment, this is a question just for Mary and the Part C office, is if we can make sure that we get the APR to review prior to the meeting, the January meeting, so we really have time to read it before the meeting. So hopefully it'll make sure that we can get to those questions and approvals, because that's really important to be done in that January meeting. Any other public comment? Well, I want to thank you all for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I hope you all have some restful and rejuvenating holiday time. Hopefully take a little bit of time off from work and enjoy some quiet time or your family and friends, and appreciate that time with you. And we will see you in just a month for our quarterly meeting. And Mary will get back to us if we do look at the 18th date and it doesn't work for people for quorum. We'll definitely get back to you as soon as we can about that. If you have any questions or anything, please let Mary and I know, and we'll get those to you. And thank you, Janice, for your work on the bylaws. And we'll do some work in between now and when we meet again to clarify some of those questions. So, and the other people who Robin and Janice and Tracy, who's not on the call anymore, to do that work in between about that scripting for the SOGI data. I appreciate that. Okay, everyone, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day and month, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.